Hi guys, welcome to today's podcast webinar, and we're just letting the numbers roll up. I just want to say a quick hi to everyone here. So we'll do proper introductions in a second, but hi Andy Solomon, hi Heather, big wave from Ian down in Berkshire, Steve Mead, Ben, hi Ben, Peter
Hello.
Knight, Kai Wheatley, the infamous Nick Neal, Christian Byfield, the man that needs no introduction, Whaley, Richard Powell, great estate agent, Gary Barker, awesome repit man. And we'll just let the numbers roll up a little bit and then we'll get going. Just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. I hope you'll learn lots from it. We've certainly got royalty of UK estate agency and suppliers here. So here we go, boys and girls. Thanks very much, and we'll get going with this. The ICG is an organisation of estate agency suppliers, the best in class, who have come together to help estate agents and letting agents collaborate and be innovative in their ways that they run their agency. We are doing a series of webinars that will aim to provide much needed advice and support for estate agents in these challenging times. And in this episode, we'll be joined by leading estate agents in the country, along with a panel of some amazing ICG approved prop tech and prop services suppliers who will discuss the most important topics at the moment to make your life as estate agents easier. The job here is not to sell you anything, but to help and guide and support you. On today's show, we have, in terms of suppliers, Peter Knight from the Property Academy, probably one of the most well-known, if not most important people in UK estate agency. Andy Solomon from Yomdo, Ian White, ex-Romans and ex-Countrywide director, Heather Staff from Spectre. We've got Simon Whale from Kerfuffle. We've also got Gary Barker from Repit, the UK's leading CRM supplier. And finally, we've got Ben Sellers from Starbury. But at the end of the day, it's all about the agents themselves. So what we've also got is Nick Neal, who has got 145, 150 branches under his banner with YouMove franchise. We also have Richard Powell from Ryder Dutton, who has 24 estate agency branches in the north. We've got Kai Wheatley from Keaton's, who has 9 offices in London, in East London. And finally, the Viking of UK estate agency, Christian Byfield, from his hipster place in East London. Hi everyone, say hello to everyone, to a estate agency world out there. So put your hands up and wave.
Hello,
nice.
hello.
Good
Hi
stuff.
everyone.
Right. Good stuff. Anyway, let's kick off with Peter Knight. Hi Peter, thanks for joining us today. Peter, you run the Property Academy. You've been an estate agent in the past, and you used to run the Sunday Times Awards, but now you run the Best Agent Guide and EA Masters. Fantastic event, by the way. You train and guide and support some of the very best UK estate agents out there in Britain and also around the world. And you also deal with an awful lot of great trainers from around the world, including Josh Fegan from Australia. The question that I have for you is, what strategy would you be adopting if you were back in estate agency today? Talk to me.
Well, thanks, Chris, and hello, everybody. And thank you very much indeed for having me represent the ICG and lots of other partners that we have within the organisation. You've asked a specific question: what strategy would I adopt if I was back in the estate agency today? First and foremost, Chris, I want to make sure that we get the language correct. So what do we mean by strategy? And I like Alistair Campbell's definition, which I've added to create an acronym I call POST. The P is purpose. What is the purpose? The O is basically what is the objective. The S is the single strategy. And the T stands for tactics. And you can have hundreds of tactics. So one purpose, one objective, one strategy, and hundreds of tactics.
Break that down for me, please.
So when Blair was working with Campbell, their purpose was to create a better Britain. I'm making no political judgment, but that's what they believed was their purpose. Their objective, singular, was to win the general election. Their strategy, singular, was New Labour, New Britain. The tactics, thousands of them. Similarly, Boris, okay? The purpose, again, I'm making no political statements, to create a better society. Okay, the objective, to win the general election. The strategy, get Brexit done. The tactics, thousands of them. So for a state agency, using that same basis of definition, I believe that the purpose for many, if not all estate agents, is to enable people to move on with their lives. Their single objective is to be market leader, to be number one in wherever they choose to operate. Now, the strategy, I think, for the future post this situation is what I call CX 4.0, which I'll expand on in a second. And the tactics will be thousands of them. So let's talk about CX 4.0. In simple terms, I believe that we've entered the fourth stage of customer experience. The first one was when customers basically just went to the store and bought whatever was available. And if it wasn't available, they substituted or went without. The second stage was about 1950 when brands came into play, and that was what drove customer experience. The third stage was 2000. In 2000, the internet basically exploded, and that's where we were able to purchase across the planet. But I now think we're into 4.0. And what I think estate agents need to do is to adopt a strategy of redefining what the customer experience is and then building their businesses to deliver on it. There are three main pieces or foundations to customer experience 4.0. The first one is functional and uplifting. Now, let me give you an example of that. If you haven't seen them, and you are the king of video, Chris, you didn't introduce yourself, but you are the king of video. I think the best presenter I've seen in the property industry in video is Jamie Lester. And the way he is presenting new homes developments is quite extraordinary. And it's therefore functional, but it's also uplifting. And I think that's a brilliant benchmark to look at. The second idea is to be consistent and individual. So an example of that would be to take a marketing plan for a home seller or for a landlord and treat it as if it was a new homes development. You know, for a new homes development, we would have an individual marketing plan. I think we need to have the same approach, an individual marketing plan for every seller and for every landlord. They may be very similar, but I think that the recipient needs to feel that it's been created bespokely for them, and indeed it needs to be considered in that way. And then the third is this idea about being anticipative and proactive. I don't believe it's sensible any longer to react to things. I think we've got to get ahead of the game, and it's systems and processes that will drive that. So for example, in a estate agency, that means getting tenants and buyers and sellers and landlords legally and financially prepared well in advance so that we take control of this process far earlier than we have done beforehand. So in summary, Chris, the strategy I'd adopt is totally redefining the customer experience into what I call 4.0 and building the business around that approach.
Okay, let's bring some agents in here. Put your hands up if you want to just add anything to say. Any agents? Kai, if you could unmute yourself, please. My modern technology here.
We've done a lot of work with Peter around the systems and processes and sort of expanding on what he said there with 4.0. I think the juncture of where we are now with technology and where our agency is now moving forward, we're at this sort of cusp of where things could really come together over the next 5 years and transform what we do as an agent. Also, we have the practical element of what we do day to day on the ground, but the marketing aspect and technology now is, I think, where the future efficiencies can be found within our business.
I mean, do you think that technology's actually done bad for the estate agency industry and we've almost become homogenized? I mean, Gary, bring in, you're the king of CRMs. Do you think CRMs have decreased the proactiveness of estate agents because people just go onto the system and you never hear from them again?
Yeah, let me try and brace that a slightly different way, given my biased approach to it. But I do come from a background with working at Countrywide. You know, CRMs are a facilitator. I actually agree with Peter, Kai. You know, 4.0 customer experience, digitization. The CRM is a tool, that is a conduit around it. You know, I think there's a lot of things. The CRM just supports the way that agency works. It doesn't stop the way. You know, I've seen lots of different companies, you know, use CRMs in so many different ways. But it all comes back down to a 360-degree view of the contact and looking at, you know, ultimately agents becoming asset managers. You know, they're not just looking at buying and selling houses now. They're looking at your whole investment portfolios and what is your, what is the worth as a landlord that they can provide to you.
Okay, Richard Powell, I'd like to go to you, but then afterwards I'd like to ask Nick Neal a question on this topic, and then we'll go on to Steve Mead.
Thanks, Chris. I just wanted to say that as part of creating this bespoke strategy for people, I think a really, really important part of that is to get the communication channels right. And part of that strategy has got to be to communicate with people in whatever way they want to communicate with us at whatever time they want to do it. So a true sort of omni-channel system that people can use.
Nick, I'd just like to bring you on this. On YouMove, your franchisees do everything from arranging the free valuation to actually doing all the viewings and all the offers and negotiating the sale. Is there a coincidence that that's what they do in Australia? Because I know, Ian, you do a lot of work in Australia. Could that be an issue? Because I know I launched a video this morning about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting listening to what Peter's saying, and I like the post model, but the one challenge I would put back to Peter is the objective to be number one in your marketplace. So it really depends on what the measure of number one is. So if it's to be the number one player by market share, that doesn't work for the YouMove kind of model, for example. Okay. If your objective is to be the number one most recommended agent in your area, then of course that applies very much to the YouMove model. So
Peter,
what we're doing...
Peter, yeah, so it's a very fair point, Nick. Well, I just wanted to give some sort of tangible examples, and the purpose, the objective, the strategy can be different as the tactics are. The point I was trying to illustrate, though, is that each of them is a singular other than tactics. You have one purpose, one objective, and one strategy. And what Alistair Campbell was commenting on when he designed that model was he said the problem with a lot of his political opponents, and for that matter, businesses that he's now seen subsequently, is they adopt several different strategies, and they send out a very confused message. And I would suggest that the most recent general election highlighted that. So the best idea is to have a singular objective. Now, I use that to be number one. It could be something completely different, and I totally take your point on that. But whatever it is, it needs to be defined. And then a single strategy that is created to achieve that objective, and that I think is what we've got to make sure that we do. And currently, whether you want to be the most recommended agent, or whether you want to be number one by market share, or you want to be the most profitable, whatever your objective is, right? My sense is that the strategy that I would adopt is to go completely redesigning the customer experience. Because I actually believe that estate agents are still stuck, many of them, in customer experience 2.0. They haven't even properly haven't embraced 3.0 yet. But we're going to leapfrog to 4.0.
We're going to be going on to Andy Solomon to talk about customer experience in a second. But before we do that, let's go back to our correspondent, Steve Mead, who's watching Facebook Live. Steve, what's coming in on the Facebook Live?
Like to be fair, Christopher, not a great deal at the moment. We've still got the numbers are still going up. People are joining. So if any of the audience on the Zoom call want to ask questions or they want to comment, then just go onto Facebook Live and just fire your questions over. If it's pertinent to a particular question or comment that's been made, we'll get Chris to speak to the guys on your behalf.
Good stuff. So any other questions that came in before we started that might be relevant for Peter talking about the strategy?
There was one, Christopher, from Trevor Ames. Could Peter give some examples in lettings?
In terms of strategy, well, I think it's the same. I think it's the same thing. If you're talking about the three tenets, the idea about it being consistent and individual and functional and uplifting. But I think from a consistency and individuality perspective, you have a consistency as far as the actual process is concerned, but you absolutely tailor it to make people feel individual. I mean, if you take tenants who have been treated pretty much as sort of second-class citizens by a lot of agents, my sense is that customer experience 4.0 is going to be to transform how the tenants experience and to make them feel truly valued and part of this process. And I think a big part of that is treating them as individuals as opposed to one homogenous sort of rather derogatory term of tenant. You know,
okay,
the language alone, I think, needs to change.
Let's bring in Christian, and then we'll move on to the next question. Christian.
Yeah, so totally agree with Peter there about a focus on tenants. I think it's for many agents that have lettings operations, it is the big missing piece of their puzzle. I think gradually agents are waking up to the fact that they're realizing what a tenant becomes. I think it's really important that agents understand that most people start their lives as a tenant, but obviously they then go on a journey. Typically, most people now will be a tenant of multiple properties, but then eventually they will become a homeowner, and eventually they might become a buy-to-let landlord. And that experience that you give them as a tenant is so important. You know, the way that person identifies with your brand. If you treat someone like filth as a tenant, good luck getting any business out of that person for the rest of their lifetime.
Is that because we're too transactional in a state agency compared to like Australia, where it's very relationship based? Anyone else want to? I know I was going to go on to the next question, but this is good stuff. Anyone else want to talk about that? I know, Peter, you've got some great thoughts on that, and I know you have Ian as well. So whoever puts their hands up first goes first. Ian.
Muted.
Yeah, I genuinely believe that we're going to see a move towards personal brands underneath the umbrella brand, and that will allow those people to focus in the way that Peter's suggesting. I mean, I think the lack of focus and the lack of implementation on a simple, singular strategy and goal is really very evident in most of what we see in the estate agency world. And I think that singular focus is easier to develop when you've got really top quality people delivering in a local community in the way that we see it in other parts of the world.
Well, we're going to be coming to you on people later. Peter, final thing to say on this before we move on to Andy to talk about customer experience.
Look, if you just do the simple maths on this, right? If you wanted to complete on 100 properties, I'll just take the sales side for a second. If you want to complete on 100 properties a year, all right, in a branch, you probably need 1,000 people to work with on the basis of people moving once every 10 years. It'll vary from one location to another, but let's say 1,000. Okay, if you make 5 phone calls a day, okay, you can speak to 1,000 people on a 45-week year basis. So, you can speak to them twice if you make 10 phone calls a day. You can therefore deliver a highly individual service on that basis by speaking to just 10 people a day, right? 10 phone calls a day. That's what I'm talking about in terms of, so the consistency is making 10 calls a day, and each one of them is individual and personalized, as opposed to just vomiting property onto the market, which was a term that a former Rightmove marketing director used, and bulk emailing everybody and carpet bombing people with leaflets and all of that stuff. Those days are over. It's got to be far more personal, far more relationship driven, far less transactional.
Thank you for that, Peter. Right, let's move on. We have got a few question and answers coming in through through Zoom, which Steve, we can pick up, if you could pick up as we go on to the next time.
Yeah,
let's
no, we've got a couple. Yeah.
Yep. Anything that you want to just ask before we move on?
No, I think we've covered most things there. If we move on to the next one, yeah, certainly Q&A through Zoom as well as Facebook, and we'll try and address those.
Good stuff. Right, next question is for Andy Solomon, who's from Yomdal, and your question is as follows, Andy. How are customer experiences and expectations changing in the estate agency, and what do estate and letting agents need to do now to adapt to these changing expectations?
Thanks, Chris, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I'd like to echo some of the things that Peter's been saying and others in the group about customer experience being absolutely central. At the end of the day, the most important person is me. I don't mean me, just me. I mean everyone as individuals. Whether you are a business person, an agent, whether you are a vendor, whether you are a tenant, whenever you go to interact with a company, to find support or information, you are the most important person. You are not looking at yourself through the prism of the view of the business that you're interacting with. So thinking like the customer is no longer an option. It is absolutely, it's the only way really to approach how you then build these relationships and turn customers into advocates going forward. There's a quote which I love to plunder, which was said by a woman called Maya Angelou. Some of you might have heard this before. She was an American civil rights activist, a very bright and very fascinating woman. But she essentially said, they may forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And if you just reflect on that for a moment and just think about good experiences that you've had, do you actually remember what someone said to you, or do you remember how you felt when you came away from it? And to echo the point about tenants, because at Yondell we're working with thousands of agents in the UK, and a constant refrain is, oh, we're not interested in tenants, just push them over there, let them sort themselves out. But they are tomorrow's buyers. They are tomorrow's vendors. They are people who may well be property owners themselves already. They are people who have networks of friends and relations. And if you as a business now think that you can come out of the COVID situation and expect things to pick up exactly as they were previously, then my personal view is that that's not going to happen. The consumer is now more empowered than ever before. They are able to, sorry, Chris, you want to say something?
Do you think estate agents can't see beyond their pipeline and they're very transactional and very, they can't see the bigger game, the long game, they can't be patient?
Yes, I think they are transactional. Not all estate agents, obviously, but there are a large number out there that are very transactional. They're thinking about the next commission. And Australia was mentioned just now, and I kind of joke to people that estate agents in Australia are often a bit like the family doctor. They get passed down from generation to generation. Because there is an ongoing and constant relationship with that person. It's about personality, it's about being customer centric, it's about going over and above, it's about helping people with things that aren't necessarily to do with a transaction that comes at the end of it. And right now, within the COVID period, as we're planning for the upside, as we're looking at the next step, now is the time to be looking at people, looking at your contacts, and actually seeing how you can support them, guide them, and educate them as to what will be possible in the future.
Fascinating. I mean, it's interesting. I'll come to you in a second, Ian, but Heather actually gave me a stat a year ago that only 1 in 8 people actually go back to the agent they bought their house off. I mean, how awful is that? Ian, come in and carry this conversation on, please.
I just wanted to talk about the bit, Peter Knight, I don't want to embarrass him, but he taught me a thing called alignment. So I think if we want to move away from transactional to relationship, then we need to align the pay and reward to delivering those outcomes. So once you've picked your strategy, you've got your goal and your purpose and your focus, make sure that everything you do is aligned to that. But most importantly, or definitely a big part of that, has to be the pay and reward structures.
Okay. Andy,
otherwise you're going to be able to keep
them. Go on.
Sorry, I just wanted to add just a slightly different perspective as well, that thinking about the situation in the marketplace now, there's a lot of agents out there who are kind of keeping their heads down and they're waiting for times to pass so they can emerge blinking into the sunlight later on. But we're seeing huge upticks in activity with people asking questions and looking for support and looking for help. This is now an amazing time to be building bridges and building relationships with your potential customers and their networks. Yesterday, one of the major brands that we work with, we saw a 35% increase in live chat engagements in one day.
Okay, Nick, you put your hand up.
Yeah, I did. I was just going to kind of allude to what Andy's saying here. So, if you take a brand like YouMove, it's a very in-your-face brand. It's a UK-wide brand. But actually, when you look at the customer reviews that we get, it's all about the individual person who delivered a service. And it's that person that is the lead in their local market. It's that individual that gets passed down from one family member to another and referred and recommended. So even with a brand like ours, it's not so important. It is really down to the relationships that individual is able to build, which is why the model of any agent, whether it's the kind of model we adopt or high street, is so critical. It comes back to really what Peter was saying about having the time for those individuals to build those relationships is absolutely key.
Let's go Christian, and then we'll go back to Steve to see if there's any questions, and we'll move on to the next question. So Christian.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of experiences we've had. We've always been very service focused and experience focused as an agency, and I just wanted to highlight a couple of sort of things we've had sort of as payback out of that. We've had a number of tenants actually now. I mean, we're coming up 16 years now. We're now starting to see former tenants come back to us as landlords. And the fascinating thing about that is that when I say they're coming back to us, they are exclusively talking to us based on that experience they had with us a decade ago. So there is definite, brand value in that. And not just focusing on tenants as well, the service you give your landlords. We had a rather sad incident recently where we had one of our earliest landlords sadly recently passed away. But quite staggeringly, we'd actually been written into his will. So he'd been so happy with our service, he'd actually put in his will that the family had to keep the property. And not only that, they had to retain us as the lettings and managing agent. And that was, you know, obviously sad, but quite emotional. So it goes to show service, you don't get the immediate payback, but the long-term payback is incredible.
Okay, quickly to Ian, and then I must go to Steve because we need to crack on.
I was looking at the Q&A down the bottom that are coming in, and a few people are sort of asking, you know, how can we still be talking about service in this day and age as if it's not a problem? Okay. And I think agents need to take a reality pill in terms of what they think they're delivering, and service is not the problem of the other guy. The service standards within our industry and the results and the outcome for our consumer are not at the highest levels possible. Heather will be able to tell you the amount of people that have to sell through the second agent. I think it's in the 60%. So more than half the instructions that come onto the market to sell, the first agent fails to achieve it. Then there's the vast majority have to reduce their price. They take weeks to sell. They take 17 weeks to go through. And we do viewings when it suits us, and we, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the whole industry does need to just take a deep breath. The problem of customer service is not how we perceive it. It's how the consumer perceives it. And I'm pretty certain if we did a straw poll of consumers, no matter how great you think you are as an individual agent in your particular town, the view overall and the general picture of the service delivery is way below par. It needs to be revolutionized. As Peter says, pick your strategy, go for it, but it has to be customer centric. Has to be.
Steve, anything coming in on the hotline or on the Facebook?
Yeah, there's a couple actually. Just one on that point from Ian Macbeth from Avocado in Berkshire. Can a traditional estate agent model actually give a client a bespoke or personal one-on-one relationship when they are built around factory-style departmental process? Sort of follows on from what you were just saying, Ian, I think.
Anyone want to say anything on that? Put your hand up. Kai.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it goes towards the attitude of that you take for each customer and the training within in-house. So I agree, at scale, when you've got dealing with thousands of clients, how do you maintain a consistent servicing every single time? And in particular on the letting side, there is generally a 4-to-1 increase on letting registrations over there are sales registrations. So you do have a volume issue to manage as a business. But that said, doesn't excuse that you need to deliver as best service as you can every single time and not treat it as a manufacturer process, but each relationship is to be stemmed to a future relationship.
Excellent. Right, let's move on to the next question. And it moves in quite nicely to Ian White. This is a people question. So send your questions in, boys and girls. Right, Ian, how do you think estate agents should stage the unfurloughing of staff in the coming weeks and months? Oh, that's topical. Go for it. Talk to me.
Unfurloughing, a new word in the English dictionary. I think that's actually a very, very individual question, because you're going to have first of all, it's a strategy question as well as people, because I think, you know, we're now challenging a lot of estate agents to show their business acumen as well as their ability to do the job of being an estate agent. And I think one of the skills of some of the best business leaders or estate agency leaders is knowing when to throttle back, how much to throttle back, and when actually to, what to throttle back, and when to actually put the foot down and go for it on the upside, and using what strategy. But I think furloughing is going to be, I've said that wrong, haven't I, Heather? I can see Heather laughing. We had this conversation off air earlier, but so I think that's going to be a very individual strategy based on what you've got on your balance sheet, how big your business is, when the government support finishes in relation to when we can all go back to work. So, you know, knowing how many people to bring back, you know, that's a very delicate leadership situation, because the people you leave in deep freeze the longest aren't going to feel particularly loved. So you're going to have to handle that very, very carefully. But in the same breath, is it realistic to expect that the number of people that you've currently got are going to be the same number or even type of people that you're going to be working with moving forward? We need to be realistic about this. I think the industry is going to change in many ways, and I think headcount and type of headcount are part of that change.
Okay. I mean, interestingly, I'm hearing that bosses, and we'll come on to you agents in a second, have basically furloughed everyone, and some have almost gone to sleep, and others are actually picking up stuff. So Richard or Christian or even Kai, what sort of percentage have you furloughed, if you don't mind me asking?
At the moment, we've furloughed none. So we're fully operational.
Kai?
We've just reassigned some of what people do. We've just given them different tasks, got more time picking up phones, talking to people, just having conversations, building content for us to put out once we go back to full swing.
Kai, is there anything you want to add?
60% for us.
Okay. Richard?
Well, our numbers, we've furloughed 165 and we have 30 people left working.
Okay.
I mean, one thing, can I just point a question back to Ian just about what he was talking about? Based off the topic we were just talking about customer experience, talking about who you bring back when, I think a lot of agents, the tendency would be to bring back, to sort of prioritize sales or negs sort of first bums on seats to start generating that lost revenue. Do you think agents need to think really carefully about what roles they're bringing back? If we're talking about the customer experience, obviously, you know, agents are going to be desperate to recoup lost revenue over the last weeks, months. But thinking about that customer experience, you know, do they need to be thinking about the roles and really maybe placing more of a focus on the bums on seats that deliver that experience first before then driving towards sales?
It would depend on what strategy journey they've decided to take, I think. I mean, if they're looking to build a high service ethic business, then clearly they need to bring people back that can deliver that relationship into the, you know, that relationship building into the marketplace. If their strategy is to literally make up for lost ground, and some are going to have that strategy, they may need to bring in the people that can do the deals. So I think it all comes back to the very first question that we asked: what's the strategy? Then you build everything behind that strategy, whether who you bring back, whether you bring back, how much you pay, how you reward, what timing you do it. For me, all has to line up to that one headline strategy of what it is you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to get huge, brilliant customer satisfaction scores, you're going to have a very different view on who you bring back in at what time and what jobs you get them doing, than if your number one strategy is to build your pipeline to whatever magical number it is you want to come up with, or a percentage of new listings, or whatever your strategy is.
Heather, could you put your hand up? Anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, we've heard quite a lot from some of our clients that some of their competitors have gone, as you said, totally dark, as in, you know, not communicating with their existing vendors, landlords. So my first message would be, you know, it is tempting to maybe furlough more than is necessary. And I think quite a few agents have gone too far down that road and are neglecting vendors and landlords. So my first message would be, don't do that. There are some very worried vendors out there who want to hear from somebody who knows what they're talking about. So I would say to agents listening, make sure that you aren't neglecting your current clients. But on the flip side of that, that does also represent an opportunity for the clients, for the agents out there who haven't done that and who have got the ability to offer a helping hand, offer professional, courteous, sensitive advice. There is an opportunity there because certain agents have gone totally dark.
Okay, we're going to be coming back to you for your question in a second, but let's go back to live to Steve in the studio. Steve, any questions?
Live in the studio, yeah.
Yeah, we like this. This is good.
A lot of people are talking around the high street agency, and we're seeing the end of the agency. I'll just quote Phil Farrell: as a former supporter of the high street agent model and now in prop tech, is this the beginning of the end for the high street agent? The likely two highest expenses for agents are rent and salaries. Surely the tech-enabled mobile estate agent with some form of high street advertising is the future.
Okay, let's go live on this one, but make it short and sweet, team. Andy, you're up first. Is the high street dead?
It's a really interesting question. The end of the high street agent doesn't mean the end of traditional values. And if any businesses out there have been thinking, well, digital's not really for us, that question is now obsolete. Digital is for you because your customers are using digital. Your customers are online. You need to think very, very carefully about how you can find ways to engage with people in the places where they are, which is not walking down the high street, certainly right now, but also into the future. The customer's now empowered digitally more than ever before.
Richard, you've got 24 rents to pay each quarter. Has it made you think a little bit differently?
Certainly made us think. I am not totally convinced that the high street is dead, I must say. I think that having some physical presence in an area, in my mind, is still quite important in order to prove credibility, really. I think it possibly does depend on how good the people in the branch are and how well known they are or not. I think that's an important factor. But I don't think we're planning on rushing off and closing 24 branches anytime soon. No.
Anyone else got any strong opinions on this? Okay, Andy, we've had a bit, so we'll go Christian, then Ian. Christian first.
No, I don't think there's anything wrong with high street. I just think when we're talking about experience, you've got to think about what that experience is, no matter where it is, website, online, tech, whatever. I think a lot of agents have to rethink what a showroom looks like. You know, what experience someone gets in there. I find, you know, when I travel and you walk past a lot of agents' shops, and 80% of the agents you look at, they look exactly the same as they did 20 years ago. Polystyrene ceiling tiles, boring desks, particulars on the wall, bored-looking staff, you know, a big whiteboard with targets on the wall. You know, that's not what people want. You know, if you look at what retail is doing, retail is shifting very much online. They're having less locations, but the experience you get in a good retail store now is phenomenal. You'll go in, you'll be treated like an individual. You'll get made a nice cup of coffee. You'll be walked around. You know, some agents have been doing this for years. Don't get me wrong. This is nothing new. But I think agents massively need to think, when you're talking about an experience someone gets with your brand, it's every experience in any situation. And for me, high street absolutely has value. But when that person walks through the door, you want them to walk away with that wow about what they had. You don't necessarily need to have done a deal. You know, you just need to have made that amazing impression.
Well, it comes back down to customer experience, is what Peter said. So, Ian, you had your hand up. Go for it.
I'm just a believer that I don't think it matters. I think there's space for high street, non-high street, pay up front, pay on results. I think it comes down to doing whatever you do in whatever model you're in exceptionally well. I don't think whether you've got a high street shop or not is the big deal here. I think the big deal is that average just won't cut it. I think you're going to have to be way above average to succeed and to stay in the game.
Okay, let's quickly go to Ben. Keep it nice and short, please.
Yeah,
and then we'll move on to Heather.
Just really that, you know, there's never been a better time to run your minimum viable product. You know, reality is we're 3 weeks in. People are still getting used to it. See how they feel in another 3 weeks' time. We're all getting used to be on video. It's a new way. It's a new normal. So why not try it out before we worry about whether you're closing shops or not? I think get on, embrace the new normal. There's never been a better time. If I'd asked everyone to have done this, you know, done virtual viewings and virtual valuations a month ago, they would have said no. But now you've got no choice. So try it and see.
You know what, ladies and gentlemen, he's showing himself for the first time. Mr. Simon Whale, put your hand up. We thought you were just a blow-up doll. You're actually a real person. Talk to us, Simon.
What time does this finish?
Short and sweet.
Just on this customer service point, I think it's really important when the market returns, as it surely will. The idea that the public are going to give us sympathy for poor customer service is unrealistic. They're going to be, you know, it's what have you done for me lately sort of thing. So there is a massive opportunity there, and of course a risk from it as well. If you can outperform your competitors by out-servicing them, I really truly think that this is the time to do that and make that market share, because there's no doubt at all vendors are already playing off estate agents against each other in this market with self-isolation, saying the other guy will come round and value my house or do a private viewing. So just bear that in mind, that obviously, yes, there are some complete bastards out there.
That's a technical term. Quickly, let's go to Gary, then we must move on to Heather's question.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think, you know, this is where I do think technology and some of the bigger technology and data players need to support as well. Customer service is great, and Peter quite rightly points out you need to make X number of calls, but often it comes down to knowing which customer number of calls to do. I mean, we analyse internet registrations all the time, and I know Richard's nodding because uses a lot of our tech, as does Kai, and they, you know, we see a huge proportion of those internet registrations and inquiries go unprocessed. And at first glance, you go, well, that's really bad service, yeah. But imagine a scenario where those data providers, the likes of Rightmove and Zoopla and On the Market, can actually start giving better insight into those, and not just Gary Barker's looking at, would like to arrange a viewing on this property, but at the same time identifying that Gary Barker also looked at 34 other different properties, has also been cookie tracking around, kind of house renovations, house things, and actually start presenting data back into the likes of the CRMs to add more value to it, and actually scoring some of that data. And then we can start delivering better customer service.
There you go. God forbid the portal's actually giving value for money, eh? Right, let's move on to Heather. Heather.
I didn't say that. Don't you hold me towards that.
I said that. All right. Heather.
Yes.
From Spectre, how should agents approach lead generation now? And in fact, should they be lead generating? Talk to me.
Yeah, so as I was saying before, I think a lot of agents have stopped completely, which, is understandable in many respects. I think if you really can't, afford or have people to do any of this, then I understand that it's something you can't do. But my advice would be, if you do, then actually now can be a good time, with a huge caveat that your tone and your content need to be massively different to the way that it would be in normal times. We've seen some incredible content go out through Spectre that is very smart, but totally different to what you'd normally expect. So we've seen.
Give me some, not chapter and verse, but give me some flavour of the tone and the direction of what they're saying.
Okay, so firstly, most people are turning off all the normal trigger letters, so timeline that you would normally do in a normal environment, which I fully support. And they're sending, what we've seen on Spectre Sales is people sending one-off letters to people on market, not even referencing the fact that they know that they're on the market, but genuinely just saying, hope you're well. If you need any property advice during this time, then I'm here. I do FaceTime. I can talk you through what home renovations might be a good idea to get your house ready for sale if that's something you're thinking about. So really, really soft. And by the way, any Spectre clients listening, there's a whole folder full of inspirational templates that we've provided. But I would say don't do the hard sell, don't be aggressive, and be genuinely helpful and professional. That is the only way to go in the moment.
What about lettings? I'm hearing some good news from around the country from my clients saying that the lettings is getting some good stuff through you guys.
Yeah, lettings is again being used slightly differently, but actually most people are still sending their Spectre lettings letters, but just with some slightly amended text around what you can do to help landlords during this time, which apparently is being received really well, because again, landlords are being neglected. They're also panicking, and they are genuinely wanting to hear from people who've got advice to give them.
Okay, any of the agents or panelists got anything to add about lead generation? Okay, Steve, what does the Tinterweb say about anything about lead generation?
Not a great deal, Chris. Pete Lawrence from Lawrence Rand is agreeing with Heather. Communicate. Other than that, very quiet. There's a good point from Richard Heptonstall. Says the media are talking us into a future recession at the moment. This is going to put the fear of God into many potential clients. What are your thoughts on this? Anybody want to comment on that?
I think the big one's going to be, the big one for estate agents is not necessarily house prices. We will see a bit of a dip, but it's transaction numbers. There's going to be a less of the pie, and they're going to have to get off their backsides with what Peter says. I think whoever decided Peter was on first was sublime, because it just set the tone. Yeah. It's all about getting your strategy right and getting a bigger slice of the pie.
Exactly, and Christian Stott says we've seen different numbers being bandied about. What transaction levels do the panel predict for the next 12 months from now, and how do they see them being phased?
Anyone? I've got.
Kai?
We're being fairly cautious about the balance of this year, actually, and also assuming that we've got potential start back from June onwards. We're projecting a pretty slow start pick up on that. That said, has been supported by the sales pipeline has remained intact. We haven't had a wholesale pull out, people wishing to do anything other than just park it on the fence at this moment in time. And it clearly is quite a lot managed in terms of landlords and tenants' positions through this, but I would expect a fairly cautious second half of the year.
Ben, you've got some sound transaction numbers.
Yeah, we've just found that a lot of people have been, we think of leads as let's get a new lead, but this whole concept of you're sitting on a pool, a database. I would say right now, focus on that database, actually use some of these new tools out there to actually get in front of them. And I know from a lot of our clients that they are actually, because they've got the time on their hands, they're actually having to pull back furloughed staff because they didn't realize how much work and opportunity there is in their current database. So get working it hard because other people are letting theirs fall asleep.
Interestingly, as you know, I'm a property statistician, and I've been looking at all the reports, and the averages are coming in terms of transactions that the sensible ones will be a reduction of 45 to 50% on the 10-year average until the end of Q3, improving to 80% in Q4 and 100% by Q2 2021. But this is the interesting part, is because we've almost been curtailed and dampened down by the B word, we're only running in the UK at the moment, in the last 12 months, about 72% of the 10-year average. So actually anything over 72 will actually do us some good. So yeah, it will go like that, but it should come back the other side. Anyone else got anything to do on transactions? Andy, then Peter, then Gary, go.
Yeah, just very briefly, we're tracking sentiment in the market through the interactions that we're having across agents throughout the country, and we are seeing a slight uptick in terms of new vendor and landlord inquiries coming through over the last week in particular, and indeed some of the anecdotal information that we have from clients in certain markets, London in particular, Kai, from one of our clients there, are that the letting side of the business, landlords with vacant properties, tenants coming to end of contracts, all these kinds of things, that there is activity there. So the notion that there's nothing going on at the moment and nothing is going to happen till later, I believe is false.
Peter.
There is opportunity.
I'm in Andy's camp. Del Norton, who Ian and I know very well from the Romans days, had a saying that he repeated, every market makes a market. And then he added, the thing is you need to know which market you're in. We're going to see I think, I'm taking a different view. I could be wrong, but I'll get off the fence. I think we're going to see a substantial increase in activity when we get back, because I think we had a really pent-up demand beforehand as a consequence of the post-Brexit scenario. The first couple of months of the year, many agents reported were really, really good. Now, people have been at home, and when they're at home, several things happen. There could be another baby boom, they reckon. There could be another divorce rise, they reckon. In some cases, it might be happening in the same household, who knows. We're going to see a lot of people who actually now realise that they want a different home to the one that they've got. And I think we'll see some cultural changes. I could see a lot more people thinking about, are they going to commute? My brother, for example, does 3.5 hours a day commuting. He said to me the other day over a virtual chat, there's no way I'm going back to that. No way at all. I'm just not going to do it. So I think we'll see a lot of lifestyle as well as life stage transactions. It's not going to happen overnight. You've got to get momentum going. But I remain optimistic that we are going to see us coming out of this faster and quicker than a lot of the harbingers of doom would have us believe.
Well, bad news sells newspapers, doesn't it? Right, can we go, Chris?
If you're on it as a business, if you're on it as an agent, there's enough for you to go at. Because there will be a lot of agents who will not be around as a consequence of their completely going, not just into hibernation. I mean, some of these people, look, there are businesses that will not survive this. There's going to be less estate agents around. So I actually think the good ones who prepare brilliantly well, who reimagine their business, can capture a lot more market share.
God, he's good value for money. Christian and then Richard.
Yeah, that closing sentence by Peter sort of pretty much stole what I was going to say a little bit, actually.
Okay.
Which is,
all right.
I think tough markets are actually amazing opportunities for good agents. The faster the market goes, the easier the market is, the more we have an influx of people who actually fundamentally aren't good agents. They're just good transactions. They're just good at transactions. The moment the market gets tougher, that's when you separate the wheat from the chaff.
There you go.
And in 2008, 2010, we saw one of our biggest percentages of growth over that sort of 2 to 3 year period, because all the ones who'd been riding an easy market for the last 5 years just vanished. And
Richard.
All of a sudden,
okay,
yeah.
let's keep it short and sweet. Richard, then Gary, then Simon. Keep it short, please, guys.
So we've definitely got more leads and more interest at the moment than we'd expected. Therefore, we're having to look at the numbers that we've got, and wonder if we need to bring more people back. What we have got is an awful lot of leads through the portals that are not of the right quality. So coming back to what Gary was saying before, we need a better way of filtering these leads. And coming back to what Ian was saying before, we then need better people to deal with the right leads effectively. And at the moment, we're dealing with hundreds of leads, but a lot of them are not very good quality, and we need to try and sort that out in a better way.
Okay, Gary, then Simon.
Yeah, and I'm a bit like you, Christopher. Stato. So a couple of things. A couple of European countries, you know, they that followed the same trend. They were peaking January, February, beginning of March, dipped down, kind of huge, great dips. Within 4 weeks, 6 weeks of coming back out of the progression, they were actually at 50% transaction volumes. And if you look at China as well, China is at 120% of its transaction volumes. Again, with China, stats always vary a little bit, but they're above where they actually were. And if you look at where we track, kind of activity across our customer base, we were actually seeing volumes nearly 30% year-on-year increases of front-end valuations compared to year-on-year, which means that pent-up demand is there. And if the government are going to do, if the government are going to look on this, we're seeing builders already beginning to go back to work. Those supply chains are beginning to open back up again. And so if the builders and the developers are seeing something, they've got an insight that they're bringing their workers back and they want to build houses. There's a reason why they do that, is because they see they can make money. So that's either going to be an increase in Help to Buy, or it's going to be the opportunity around stamp duty. And if the government does support the housing industry above and beyond, we're going to see, I actually agree with Peter, but it could be even bumpier. It could even go above that. I mean, imagine a London scenario with a reduction in stamp duty. I was on the phone to Patrick Littlemore just before I came off here, and we were debating this, and he said to me, could you imagine all of the older population who have been lived in London for 20 plus years, the opportunity to kind of cash in and take an advantage of that, and also accelerate the pipelines, because people will see if there's a finite window of, say, 6 months, man, you're going to get short pipelines that come out of that as well. So it could be, if we get the support we need as well, I think it could be, that little bit on the top.
Interesting. Although we don't want a Myra situation where they stopped it and it dumped off the other end. Simon, let's make it short and sweet.
Yeah, I agree with everything in Gary's short answer there. The only thing I would say is, is that be very careful of that honeymoon idea. Just because we all wish that the market is going to recover, and we are going, I truly believe what Peter said in this, there's going to be a period where you can get market share. What has always been the case and shown here is the minute the market bounces back, you get a load of new agencies starting up and dropping the fees, and you think, bloody hell, that didn't last long. So again, customer service is going to be key in terms of maintaining that grasp for market share.
Good stuff. Right, Steve, any groovy questions come in before we move over to Whaley for his piece de la resistance?
Piece de la resistance. No, some good comments. Kev Ellis, don't forget the volume of new home stock that need to be sold or was work in progress up until the lockdown. This stock falls into the most motivated sellers out there right now. Lots of positive comments about the actual webinar as well. Inspiring, so pleased we logged on. Please keep these going, guys, on a regular basis. So lots of comments there. But yeah, I think we've got a question for Simon next.
Okay, Simon. Kerfuffle, never heard of that before. Anyway, it must be a football team. Simon, this is your question. Clearly, this market or lack of it is giving business owners a chance to reimagine their businesses. What would you be doing to facilitate this?
Okay, thank you, Christopher. First thing I would say is I'm the only presenter that's brought props. Happy Banana Day and Take a Wild Guess Day. So a lot of the questions have been coming back. What's your prediction? And for a lot of things, don't try and second guess it. You can't do that. What I would say is partner. I'm going to do the hard sell that no one else can do, by the way, in this thing. Partner with businesses, many of the businesses in today that are going to be at the forefront of those statistics and analytics, and will give you advice how to bear with it. Now, I'm not going to claim to be some sort of futurologist, but clearly I am. I've been saying for some time now that there's really no part of an estate agency, bar the market appraisal, that can't be outsourced. And what I would be advising people to do at the moment is take a good long look at their business as it was before it was locked down, and score every key part and function of that business very honestly about how well you're doing it. If you're not doing it well and you want to keep it in-house, then you need to be going to the likes of any of the training gurus, and Peter Knight in particular. You need to be going to them and talking about the improvement of those. But I would be looking at what you can do efficiently outside of that and specialising and allowing those people to specialise. So I think that's a really important process because you need a new model now going forward. I'm firmly of the opinion of that. The old model's under pressure anyway. So if that's said, you need to be again teaming up with people like Peter Knight who can help build that structure coming out, so that we're not just doing the same old things because that's what we've always done. Equally, if you're looking at your business and you find out that you're poor at sales progression, then go with somebody like an ASP. Well, why are you going to do that? Well, they're no sale, no fee, unlike other solicitors. They cut transaction times by 4 weeks. Be really honest with yourself about what you do well and what you don't do well in there. If you're looking at, efficiencies, Christian, we've got Christian here, who's one of those rare people who's an agent and a supplier. And he's bringing obviously the depository to help out with the tenants, the end of the tenancy stage there. Gazelle for again the end of the process. And you want to understand as well is if we are going to see that little bit of a bump in the marketplace, then maybe now's the time to step it up into a higher price point. Deal with your clients better on that customer service element. What we have in the ICG group, we have go-to group that allow you to offer that concierge service or do it yourself. But my firm opinion is you should go with the specialists. Okay. And I think you can unlock it even in this market. Somebody's mentioned it before, but we've got, Kev Ellis's fantastic Land and New Homes network, a bit of a plug, but we're doing a webinar later with them at 3 o'clock. We've got a fantastic deal. And their clients are unlocking deals even now, as Gary alluded to. The builders are releasing stock and have to do that. So I suppose to summarise, my buzzword is be ready to return. Have services like Spectre, Prospect Engine, Sprift, OneDome and ViewBot all ready there to take the slack, because you may not be returning with full staff, to hit the floor running whilst the others are still caught in the lights, in the car lights. So yeah, that's pretty my view on it anyway.
Okay, let's keep it nice and short. Any agents that outsourcing that you're pleased with? Shout up. Nick, talk to me.
Yeah. So very similar to what Simon was saying, we do outsource quite a lot of the work that we do within UMove, but it's from a slightly different strategic position. So we try and maximise the face time that our franchisees have with customers. So that is in the appraisal, which Simon alluded to, but also the viewings and so on. So all of the kind of technology and telephone-based work and sales progression, all this kind of stuff that's remote and not face-to-face, then we work with outsourced partners very effectively. But it does come back to our core strategy of making sure that our franchisees maximise the face-to-face sales time with their clients.
Okay, anyone else got anything to say about outsourcing before we move on? Because we're on the hour, we've still got 2 more questions to ask. Christian, nice and short, please. Unlike your beard.
Yeah, no, very quick and sweet. I just wanted to add, whether it's a product or an outsourcing, just have a real think about how that fits in your business and how your business evolves around that. Don't plug in a new product and then do everything the same way you always did.
Oh, the amount of people that have got prop tech and doesn't talk to each other, or they just buy it and don't use it. Heather.
Just to add to Simon's point, now is a really good time to be looking at all of this stuff. And if you do decide to sign up to something, furloughed staff can still do training. So I know that we're dealing with a lot of furloughed staff and training them on Spectre at the moment. So there is an opportunity to just look at things that you wouldn't normally have time to do.
Steve, any questions off the Tinterweb about outsourcing or something like that? What Simon's talking about.
Really nice comment from Vicky Bibris from that great agent location in northeast London. One thing this panel won't say but should is make sure you're using the very best suppliers, trainers and consultants, the very people on this panel. It's easy to think you know it all, you don't. Together we learn more, achieve more. It's all about personal growth. Your business will only grow as much as you do. Thank you to you all. Thank you, Vicky, for that comment. It's very nice.
Thank you, Vicky, for that. Right, let's move on to the next question with the king of CRMs himself, Gary from Repeat. Gary, how can integrations and PaaS solutions
You can't
support
even say
agents?
that, can you? You don't know.
I can't. And to be honest with you, what the bloody hell is PaaS?
Do you know what yeah, no, look, I mean, and I think this is going to echo what Simon was saying. There's a lot of prop techs out there, there's a lot of partners out there. I mean, I quote Simon, you know, the king of stats himself, where he kind of flags between, you know, each agent using between 13 and 15 different solutions. It's great that you know, there are all these solutions out there, but do they plug in together? You know, do you have to log in and out of different systems? Can you exchange data between those two different systems? Do they exchange data two ways? And I think this is the efficiencies that we're seeing with PropTech nowadays. You know, we've obviously launched our foundations platform as a service, which is the PaaS. And what that does, it allows other technology businesses to, I mean, only today our CTO has just launched a story with our Repeat Connect system, which is our single sign-on. So any developer can produce an app. They don't have to worry about security. The security is going to be in behest on us. So they're sharing our security and single sign-on. You know, Richard and Kai don't have to log in and out of different systems. They can move data around. You know, I know that Heather's looking at it at the moment, building apps. I was on the phone to Andy yesterday. His team are building apps. And actually making sure that data comes back into the CRM at the right time, that agents can do something with it. Because we talk about customer services, single view of the customer, whether they're a buyer, seller, landlord, tenant. Ultimately, all of these disparate systems need that data and analysis coming back into the CRM. So the likes of Richard and Kai and Nick can make decisions around what they need to do.
Richard, Kai, Nick, does PropTech wind you up that it doesn't talk to each other, or you just don't, it goes into a big hole and you don't see what the advantages are of it? Anyone? Kai first, and then Richard.
That was what I alluded to at the start, is I think we're on the cusp now of, if you look at CRMs and how we've operated for the last 15 years now, we haven't got any more efficient as an industry. Agents aren't doing any more business than they were 15 years ago. But I think what's enabled now, the technology and the way it's going, with it all communicating seamlessly with one another, that should transform it. And that obviously allows us to do more things, automate more parts of the process, and spend more time with the customer on a face-to-face level.
Richard, do you want to add something on this?
Only to say that I've probably spent the last 10 or 15 years trying to get everything in the same place, so I don't have to go from one system to another, to another. And sadly, over the last 4 or 5 years, you become tempted by something that you want, and then you become frustrated again because it doesn't integrate with the system that you spend most of your time using. So it all needs to be in one place, absolutely.
Good stuff. Gary, why do you think other CRM providers are not doing this as well as you lot? Or are they, and they're just not telling us?
No, I mean, I think that the biggest challenge, I mean, and I don't mind sharing this, and it's coming a bit of a tough time for us, that it's taken 3 years. You know, Simon and I talked about this whole kind of app and marketplace kind of pre-MBO. You know, it was a strategy for our MBO to actually become an app store and a marketplace, but it's taken that long to pull it together. And in fairness, the vision our CTO had when he came in to take what we had previously produced to where it is today, it's been just mind-blowing. I mean, it's just unbelievable what the guys have actually achieved. Completely open sourced, completely available for everybody. And I know, and I'm looking at Kai at the moment, because I know that Kai, and in fact, Christian's a good example of agents that have got a great technical solution and they're going to be plugging it into these. So it's hard for competitors to do because it costs a lot of money to actually do this and to do it in the right way, because it has to be 100% secure. And if you're going to do these open platforms, reality, we're talking about, you know, we're becoming what Salesforce and Apple have done in real estate.
Whaley, you've got something to add. Unmute yourself.
I was just typing away because I have the attention span of a squirrel, famously. I was actually just typing on Dawson's update, actually, Gary, just on that. From my view, in third-party integrations has been the Achilles heel of all CRMs, pretty much, you know, the last big thing that they needed to fix. You've seen other systems, you know, like your DesResis and your MRIs creating open APIs, facilitating, you know, better integration. But genuinely what we've seen so far, and it's early days, I think even Gary will admit, what we're going to see and what they promised to deliver with that PaaS system really sets the barrier. I use Salesforce myself as just my normal CRM system, and even that, as the world's biggest, CRM, has nothing like the sort of flexibility or power that's offered out of there. So look, it's early days, but it does look the business.
Good stuff. Right. Steve, any questions coming in from the Tinterweb before we move on?
Yeah, there's a couple of posts. David Briley from Evolve says very interesting and thought-provoking ideas. I've been promoting outsourcing for 10 years. Simon, we need to chat. Good luck with that, David. Trevor Hames, no one seems to be talking about how to automate processes in letting software. They are clunky spreadsheets and databases still. Anybody got any thoughts on that? Gary, you're nodding your head.
Yeah, no, it's a big part of the challenges I think that systems play. I mean, we know full well that there are platforms out there like Good Lord that kind of deal with a very small part of like a tenancy process, and actually, as you know, they're actually a registered partner on our platform as a service and foundation, so they'll be building that. But we ourselves have had to build a lot of process-driven technology, and one of the, do you know what, and bizarrely, and I wasn't going to comment on it earlier, is we developed a huge piece of technology called task plans, and I'm going to name check, kind of Richard Day, who's my chief customer officer. He's been beginning to push that out now, because now's the opportunity that you can actually build processes and have agents have a tool that actually defines those. Often the biggest challenge is getting an agent to define what they would like that process to do. And we've actually worked with probably 20, 30 of them now and said, look, here's what we'd recommend. If you want to kind of tweak it around the edges, now you can do it. So we've seen a 50% increase in people actually using our task plan functionality, which is exactly that, automating more processes.
Good stuff. Any other questions, Steve?
No, that's it, Chris, on that subject at the moment. I think we've got the last question for Ben, haven't we?
We've got the last question for Ben, and then if anyone's got any hot topics that we've not talked, we're going to be talking to Ben about digital marketing and what works and what doesn't. But if you've got any question whatsoever, now's the time to put it into the Q&A, because we'll do a sweep up round up at the end, and we're not afraid to answer anything. So let's move on finally to Ben Sellers from Starbury. Hi, Ben. How you doing, mate?
Hi,
Good stuff. Question I'd like to ask you is, what are the most powerful marketing channels right now in terms of A, engagement, and B, ROI, which is not the name of my Uncle Roy, return on investment?
Well, I think that it's becoming more and more sort of obvious as this lockdown has helped force the point that video has been the king of the hill for a long, long time. I don't know how many events, Peter, you've run where, Josh has said, guys, do video, do video. The beauty is that we've moved on from what we were referring to then, which was sort of static video, to the combination of both the static and live. And we've found that, getting in front of people, taking the bags off your head, and actually engaging face-to-face is fantastic. But in terms of even that as a call to action now, people want to speak to people. I mean, in a lockdown, we're physically distancing, but we actually don't want to social. They had to slightly change that wording, because actually we need to socialize. We want to see one another. We're embracing webinars. And to be fair, more than, it doesn't need to be just a group like this that can do a webinar. An agent could do a small webinar, is it get on there. But also, what we're finding is that if you've got a good piece of content, and it does come round a strategy, you don't just shoot out your content. You actually want to create some content. So let's say it is to win instructions in a lockdown. What does that mean? So explain what your process is. Build a lovely page on your website that actually explains what it is. pull in some of these really cool bits of prop tech that we've got, like Dataloft. I said in a Right Move thing this week, and Sprift, and various different tools that can generate great content to make you look like you know a lot more than maybe you actually do. You know, it's what Knight Frank have been doing for years, is, you know, punching out some really powerful data. And then once you've got this material and you've got it on your biggest marketing channel, which is probably your website or your social media channels, you can then start promoting it. So, you know, we're finding right now that paid social is incredible. It's like a tenth of the price of Google AdWords. You can target like crazy. I mean, CCT, who are part of ICG, you know, they're doing some amazing work in this area. And, you know, it is actually getting to the people that you want to get to. And when they get there, they've got engaging content. You know, you've brought yourself forward.
Okay. I think the magic thing here is the variable to success is the quality of the content. And I find it amazing that the property market is the second most interesting subject in the world to the Brits after the weather. Yet all we talk about is our market share and how big our what's names are. No one cares about that.
No.
But people do care about the local property market. And as you rightly say, where you're paying for it, or you can actually do it organically as well, because you can join local Facebook groups are based on your town, and you produce great content that talks about the property market. You'll attract people to it. It's what Josh Fegan says, be an attraction agent. Anyone else got anything to say on this? Put your hands up. Christian.
Just unmute myself. Yeah, I just want to say we've sort of tried to do something with this around this agents here to help thing that we've done the last couple of weeks, and that's been really interesting actually, because we've had nearly 100 agents now sort of sign in to try and do these live events with one another. But we've had to start pushing some content out to the guys who've signed up, because I think we had about 10 events booked in. But then we sort of stalled a little bit, and we've started calling the agents going, come on guys, why haven't you booked in your events? And what is actually coming out is that they're afraid. They're afraid of going on, looking like a fool, not getting it right, being a little bit uncomfortable, you know. And what we're saying to them is, look, just do it. Rip the Band-Aid off, do it. Be honest, be upfront, tell people it's your first thing. You know, I think we've done 4 events now. We've got 2 more today, but all 4, none of us had done live events before. It was myself, Russell Quirk, Ian Crampton from Ferndown Estates, and Mincy from Normie & Co. And I don't think any of us had done a live event before, but you just got to do it. Just get on and do it. Be upfront. I mean, I know with my one, we did the very first one. I wasn't even sure if I was live. I wasn't sure if it was broadcasting to our page. And like the first sort of minute of my live event is me being quite open about the fact I'm not sure if I'm live.
There you go. I think we're just fearful of other people's opinions. Steve, anything really hot before we wrap this one up?
You know what? There's been a few comments around fees. The fact that we've not spoken too much about fees. Ian Macbeth again makes the point. Surely, if the industry sees the low quality agents go, where did we go? Then fees must rise. Internet agents, traditional and self-employed models, all included. Anybody got any comment on that?
Only if it's one sentence. Put your hand up if you want to say anything. Do we all agree? Nod your head. Nick, go for it.
Yeah, I was just going to say fees are within the gift of the agent. It comes back to what Peter said before. It depends what your strategy is, what your service proposition is, and that's all there is to it.
There you go. That's one sentence. Christian, one sentence.
Know your own worth, set your value, don't negotiate.
Fantastic. Right. And Ian, unmute. You put your hand up,
on
Ian.
mute?
You were.
I had 2 things really. I think Ben, in terms of the digital marketing, I think that can play a great part in helping people build this personal brand. I think there's a big part in the digital space around the personal brands as well as just the actual physical brand. And in relation to the fees, I just couldn't echo any more succinctly than Nick that the fees you charge and the service you provide is totally within your gift. It's nothing to do with the consumer. It's your choice. Make a decision.
Well, I just want to say thank you for everyone attending, the panel, people on the panel, the agents, and more importantly, you guys out there in estate agency land for attending this. If you've really liked this, then I just want to remind you that the webinar recording will be available on the YouTube, Facebook page, and the ICG website. I'm going to suggest that all estate agents register with the ICG to be the first to know of any new integrations and collaborations between top suppliers in prop tech and prop services. And if we get some great feedback, I'm sure we'll do another one of these with topics that even you might want to suggest. So I just want everyone to wave at the screen and say thank you very much for attending. So there you go, everyone. Thanks very much. And I'll see you on. Thank you. Say bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye.